Welcome to the Redhead Reveal podcast, where we reveal what it means to truly connect. I'm Jenn Pinkerton, your Redhead host. I'm a psychotherapist, high-performance coach, sexologist, writer, and speaker. As a connection expert, I help people transform by exploring the root causes and beliefs and behaviors that hold them back. Let's talk about living a life where you thrive. Welcome to the Redhead Reveal podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the Redhead Recommendations again. And I've done this a few times lately, and we keep getting an overwhelming request to do it again. So here we are. This time, we narrowed it down to be topic specific. And today, we're going to talk about sex. So I have a list of questions here ready to go that people have written in or emailed in, and we'll see what we've got to work with for today. The first one says, "Hey Jenn, my partner and I talk about everything except sex. We avoid the subject because it feels awkward, but I know we're both not fully satisfied. How can we start an open, honest conversation about what we want without it feeling like a big, scary thing?" It is a big, scary thing at first. It's scary to tell someone what you want, what you need, what your desires are, because we have a fear wrapped into that. Fear of approval, fear of rejection, fear of being shamed, fear of not being liked. But at the end of the day, if you can't be vulnerable enough to share with your partner how you feel about things that are sexually related, and you can't talk about sex, then you probably shouldn't be having sex with that person. And that's really where I always go back to, because it is that important. If we want to have a sex life where we're thriving, we've got to be able to talk about things. So for this person, my response to you is lean into when it's hard. Have that vulnerable conversation where you can talk to your partner and you can say, "Hey, I want to have a conversation. Is this a good time?" Get that buy-in first. And when you know it's a good time for you both to talk, start off with telling them how much you love them, how glad you are that y'all are having sex and that you have this intimate connection. But you really have decided you want to take this next step to be vulnerable, to share with what you really want, and you'd love to learn what they really want because you want to continue to have this sense of novelty in your relationship intimately, and you want to continue to grow together. This is a great opportunity to really build a bridge of connection during something that actually could then build a bridge to way better sex. So I think that talking about it is the absolute answer, and you've got this. All right, the next question we have is, "Dear Jenn, my husband and I love each other, but our sex drives are really different. I often want sex more than he does, and when he turns me down, I feel hurt and rejected. How do we find a rhythm that works for both of us without each of us feeling pressured?" That is normal. We can have an axis here where one end of it is extreme and it's a mismatch of desire where you really never are aligned. Or there's the other end of the axis where other things like life just get in the way. You're tired, your schedules are off, you haven't been taking care of yourself, you have too much stress with work, or the kids aren't sleeping. There could be a myriad of things that affect your sex life. And so make sex not palatable for you at the time. But I think one of the key factors of rejection and how to handle that is to create an environment where you can say, "Tonight isn't good for me, but tomorrow is," or "Friday night is," or "I can't wait for our next date night," or something. And maybe leaning in to provide that sense of affection, touch a hand, give a hug, show that you do want to be connected and you do have an intimate connection, but that sex is off the table for right then. Sometimes also leaning into different types of touch, going back to that concept of gears of touch, being just affectionate, cuddling, feeling close without actually having to have maybe penetration or further aspects of sex could also be really fulfilling for you. But at the end of the day, we're going back to the same idea, which is we have to talk about it. We've got to be able to put this out there and say, "Hey, I don't want you to think that I'm not wanting you. I really do. However, these are the things that are really causing me to have a big mental load," because you might find that your partner's interested in helping you with that mental load. You might find that this conversation about sex could turn into a lot more fulfillment about your relationship in general. It could be a division of tasks. It could be creating a better environment for sex. It could creating a more of a mood room for sex. It could be going over your yuck and yum. I mean, there's so many different ways that these conversations could go. But they all start with the idea of, I want to maintain connection with you, and I want to talk about sex, what we need, what we want, and how we're going to get there. And one more thing. If you are on the end of the axis where it actually is a true mismatched desire and you've never been able to connect, come to therapy, because even that is workable too. All right, the next question. Hi, Jen. I have a hard time relaxing during sex with my boyfriend because I'm always worried about whether I'm doing it right. My brain races and it keeps me from actually enjoying the moment. How do I let go of that pressure and be more present? Well, the person that wrote this in, you're onto something because you're recognizing its presence. You're recognizing how do I let go? And some of that is slowing down, learning how to downregulate your nervous system, learning how to work with your own anxiety or work with your own sense of perfectionism is really big. And, coming to therapy to deal with perfectionism aspects or self-worth aspects, or even just dysregulation, being stuck in your nervous system where you don't feel comfortable sitting with feelings, sitting with presence. Those are all things that might really be pertinent here. Sometimes people have been in flight for so long as their trauma response, they don't know how to slow down and be present in sex at all. So these are the kind of things that if you come to therapy, you can unpack what the reason and the origin point is. What is that root cause of that feeling about not feeling that you're doing it, quote, right, or feeling perfectionistic or feeling like you have to perform? Some of these things can also be related to attachment style. So it's hard to give an exact answer for this because I feel like there's a lot of different paths that you could take, but I think all of it is very workable. And everybody can learn how to slow down, how to downregulate, how to be more intentional, how to be present, and how to fully be embodied sexually and sensually, because that is a whole aspect too. If you're always trying to, quote, do it right, or you're always trying to perform, you are not embodied. You're not embracing all your divine, beautiful sensuality and sexuality as it is. So much less being able to check the box of performance or perfectionism. So I think that this encompasses a lot of different things, and I would love for you to come in and let's work together. Next question. Dear Jen, my wife and I have been together for almost a decade, and our sex life has gotten predictable. I'd love to bring back some passion, but I don't know how to bring it up without making her feel like what we have isn't enough. What's the best way to start this conversation? I think that is very normal. So let's normalize that. When you're with a partner for a long time, sex can feel like the same old thing. It can feel routine. It's very normalized. It's very much, this is what we do. Sometimes it's even we kiss, then we have this kind of foreplay, then it's oral, then it's sex, and we're done in 15 minutes every single time. We have to continue to inject novelty. We have to have a consistent form of curiosity about sex with our partner. So the first part of that is to go back to that idea. Let's start to embrace novelty. Let's start to embrace curiosity and have this conversation about wanting to do that together. Ask for buy-in to have this conversation. We don't have it when we're running out the door for work. We don't have it when our children are crying. We sit down and give each other the privilege of our time and interest and connection to talk about how important it is to be able to connect sexually in a way where we're both feeling really satisfied and we're enjoying it. And this is a great opportunity to talk about maybe a yuck and yum list, to maybe go over what are the things that sound fun to you? What are the things that are absolutely not of interest to you? What are things that y'all have never done together, but maybe you could? Also, getting back to vulnerability, because an emotional disconnection can completely change this physical connection. So, I sell connection cards where you talk about prompts and you go through how to get really vulnerable with each other. I even have a sex edition coming out soon, which will be really helpful in this exact scenario. But getting back to those core basics where you can talk about sex, you can talk about your needs, because if you both love each other, you're going to want to make each other feel good. Okay, next one. Hi, Jen. I'm a survivor of sexual trauma. And even though my partner is loving and present, I sometimes shut down during intimacy. I want to connect, but my triggers get in the way. How do we move forward so I don't feel broken and he doesn't feel helpless? First, I want to acknowledge how heavy that is and how important it is that you can write in and ask about this. And I really commend you for that, the courage to face those things. Also, you are not broken. We are not broken. You're not something that needs to be fixed. We can all grow. We can all step back into our beautiful power. We can all become, return to the person we're born to be. And we're not limited by anything. It's just our own interest and commitment to continue to do that emotional work. Shutting down during intimacy when you've had sexual trauma is so very normal. And it can be an overwhelming experience, and your window of tolerance might be greatly reduced due to those experiences. There are ways in therapy that you work how to expand your window of tolerance. There's ways in therapy that you can process all that trauma. My first question is, have you processed all that trauma? Have you gone through maybe EMDR, which I think is the gold standard for that type of trauma? Have you addressed those feelings, or have you shoved them down? I think that is maybe really the first step we have to face here and talk about. Beyond that, if you feel like you have done some of that work and you're still feeling this way, then maybe you guys need to come in together so we can work through that together to understand, do we have some chronic PTSD that's coming up, from this? Do we have a sense of is there other ways that we can approach sex that aren't so triggering? Are there different aspects of sex that are off the table, but some that are on the table that we could explore? So I think there's a lot of ways to deal with this, but the number one would be to make certain that you have addressed that trauma and that's something that you're on a healing journey for. I definitely, again, recommend EMDR, which we offer here at Pinkerton Psychotherapy. But let's get away from thinking broken, and let's get away from thinking helpless, and let's start thinking about how can we connect, how can we be present with each other, and how can we hold space and the privilege to share and be so connected with our partner that we can be honest about what we need and what we want and work through something feeling like you are really in this together. I think that's an opportunity for you both. Okay, next question. Jenn, I've always been curious about exploring a kink, but I've never shared that with my wife. I'm nervous she'll think it's weird or reject me if I bring it up. How can I introduce the idea without making her feel pressured or uncomfortable? I always say, we don't yuck our yum. Everybody's allowed to like what they like. If you're two consensual adults, you're allowed to like what you like. And we don't want to shame our partners. We don't want to make them feel as though what they're wanting makes them weird or that there's something wrong with it. Everybody can have different ideas of what is pleasure means. You might experience pleasure one way growing up, and you might have some sexual imprint on something you like that your partner has a completely different experience and they don't necessarily get it. But even if you don't get it, there is room or an opportunity to be able to understand it and respect it. To be able to say, yeah, maybe I never want to do a threesome, but my partner is always going to want that. That doesn't mean I'm not enough. It doesn't mean they're not happy with me. And it doesn't mean I have to do something I don't want to do, but I'm never going to shame my partner for wanting something. Or for instance, a lot of couples come where they say, my partner's been asking to have anal sex forever and I never want to do that. Okay, you never want to do that. What does that mean to your partner? And do you make your partner feel as though that's dirty or that's gross? And then your partner feels bad about themselves for wanting it. And this is all just a very slippery slope. I like to get in the idea of we don't yuck each other's yum. And everybody can like what they like if you're a consenting adults. So I think that exploring the kink is, again, back to the same answer I'm going to give you for probably almost every question that we have, is you've got to start with the conversation. We have to be talking about sex to have great sex. And being able to share with some sense of curiosity, an open invitation to want to learn about your partner is really key. It's like this key ingredient in having an awesome sex life is that curiosity. I hope that's helpful. Okay, next one, and I think I'm running out of time here. Hi, Jenn. I was raised in a conservative home where sex was considered sinful unless it was for marriage. Now I'm married, but I still struggle to see sex as positive. How can I begin to reframe intimacy with my husband as something sacred and healthy instead of shameful? Oh, this is a big one because we're talking about purity culture. And purity culture is this concept of being in a religious framework where there are very strict and staunch ideas about sex. And usually the ideas are that we don't have it and it's all bad unless it's for procreation. And that's simply not accurate. We are pleasurable beings. We're designed to want pleasure, to want to feel pleasure, to want to give pleasure. We're also designed to love and be loved. And the intersection between those two things can create also some amazing sex. It's challenging when you've had that conservative purity culture background. It really can be a barrier to intimacy. It can be a stumbling block. And I think it's something that is helpful to work through in therapy. I think that's a little more of a path that you need to go on rather than a write-in question, but I am so proud of you for writing it in. But it's common. We have messages when we grow up about sex. Someone I respect a lot recently had this beautiful framework where they said, we're taught to sex is, we do it in the dark and we do it really quick when we're not caught. and everything about it seems like something's wrong with it. And then we wonder why we have issues with sex. It's not wrong. If you're adults and you're consenting, it's not wrong. You want to be able to celebrate that in a way that feels good to you both, that feels healthy to you both. And if there's this big barrier about how you feel in your head, the story in your head that it's wrong or it's dirty or it's bad, we've got to be able to work on getting that boulder out of the way, getting that barrier out of the way. And so coming to therapy for this reason is one of the really most common presenting concerns in sex therapy. And I'd love to be able to help you through it. Okay, this will be the last one we've got right here. Dear Jenn, in a relationship, I feel like I'm always the one who has to initiate sex. When she doesn't, I start to feel like she doesn't really want me. How can I stop taking it so personally? And how can we find more balance around initiation? I think that it's not this idea between 50-50, 50% of the time we do it, 50%, she does it, etc. I think that it has to do with what kind of environment are we creating where we both want to have sex? That's the bigger question. Do we have the gears of touch throughout the day? Do we have affection? Do we have playfulness? Do we connect? Do we sex text? Do we get excited? Do we have vulnerable moments with each other? Do we feel really connected? Do you think you could tell your partner anything? Do you have a present and intentional moment in sex? Do you decide that it's important to you? Is it prioritized? Do you feel special? Those are the ideas around this idea of having fulfilling sex where you both want it. Also, it wouldn't be fair to not mention the mental load, because if one or both of you is carrying a huge amount of mental load, all the things you need to do, and sex seems like one more chore on your massive to-do list, it's going to stay down there at the bottom of the to-do list. Instead, we have to create this environment about sex that it is pleasurable and enjoyable, and it's actually becomes our escape from our to-do list, our opportunity to actually do something that feels good for us, that incites joy and pleasure, and that we feel a lot of sense of connection with our partner. So I think reframing that and the way and the perspective, the way you're looking at sex is really important. And I think having this conversation about what rejection means to you. And attachment styles play into play here too, because someone with anxious attachment, you're going to have a way bigger impact with this idea of rejection during sex. And I don't like it to look like rejection. I like it to look like, let's continue to have daily, if that's what works for you both, or weekly, if that's what works for you both, conversations about sex. What do we want? What do we need? What's in the way? How can I help? How can we connect? Can we go on this gear of touch instead? Can we have a sense of playfulness instead? Can we just cuddle instead? Can we talk deeply instead? And really being in this framework of sex is not a 10-minute checklist on our to-do list. Sex is actually an experience, a pleasurable, connecting, joyful, intimate experience. And everybody deserves to have that. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. Please write in, email in, DM us your next Redhead recommendation questions, because this is really fun for me and I'd love to be able to help you all. Thanks.